Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Test Case Scenario. I'm Jason Baum, one of your hosts, and with me, as always, our panel, Nikolay Advolodkin, Marcus Merrell, and you might have noticed joining us today, we have a special guest, uh, Diego Molina. Welcome to the podcast, Diego.
Hi, Jason. Hi, Marcus. Hi, Nikolai. Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm going to make Diego really uncomfortable by reading his biography. Well, to all of you, but I'm going to read it at him. Diego Molina is a dynamic force in the world of open source software. As tech lead for Selenium and staff software engineer for open source and community at Sauce Labs, Diego is at the forefront of innovation. Hailing from Colombia, he brings a unique perspective and a wealth of experience to the table. His passion for open source is infectious, and contributions to the field are nothing short of impressive. When he's not leading tech initiatives, you can find him engaging with the community, always ready to share his knowledge and insights. And Nikolai is clapping. Perhaps we should all clap. It's very, very good.
I would
Well,
like to meet that
We
guy.
are
I would
in
like to meet
esteemed
that person.
company.
Yeah.
We are in a very esteemed company.
And look, if you're in the world of test automation and you're aware of Selenium, then I'm assuming you probably know who Diego is. What wasn't in that biography was Diego is number one contributor, I believe, in 2023 to Selenium. So another big flag to fly there. So congratulations on that, Diego. So welcome
Thank
to the
you.
podcast. Really appreciate it.
No, really happy to be here. I have seen a few episodes and I was just waiting for my turn. I was really looking forward to this.
Awesome. Well, obviously we love open source. We love Selenium. Sauce Labs born from Selenium. And so you have a really important role at Sauce Labs as the lead, our head of OSPO, and as an open source developer evangelist. So tell us a little bit about, what those roles are, what you do, and also what your role for Selenium is.
Sure. Yeah, I think to start with the bottom from the heart phrase is that I'm just very lucky to be in a place that lets me work in one of my passions, which is open source. Like, not many companies actually let you do the work I do. And having this freedom basically allows me to be around, I don't know, 80-90% of my time I can spend it in the open source project Selenium. So I am checking very often what people are asking, what new issues are being raised, if there is something strange coming up in a new browser release. And all this information is coming as a huge stream through the community, through open source. And the cool thing is that I work in a company that benefits from this open source project. So all this information is extremely useful for us as a company, as a product, because whatever is happening out there, I have the luck to identify it as something that is coming up, and then I feed that information right into the company. So whoever is using Sauce Labs is in a unique position to actually, have a product that is made to be working with the upcoming trends. So I'm just very lucky to be in this middle place that I can learn from what is happening in the community, work for the community by implementing whatever is needed, and at the same time share this information with Sauce Labs that is actually benefiting our customers and everybody else. So there is like this awesome, ecosystem that is a cycle of like learning and improving, and so on.
I'm curious, because you said a few times being able to work for the community, being able to work in the community. What is it about community that is so enticing to you, so appealing to you? Because as a fellow community builder, I mean, I have my reasons for wanting to do it. I'm wondering what yours are.
Well, to start, I just didn't know that I was getting into a community. I just was looking for a place that was friendly. So when I started working in test automation around 2014, 2013, I was in a company in Germany that gave you like a bunch of freedom to, like do test automation, but also development. And as my background was entirely software development, I had the choice, the option to go to conferences, and I picked a conference that when you read it is made for developers. So I went there, I learned a bunch of things, but I actually didn't make many connections. Like I didn't talk to many people. It was hard to to get to conversation, seeing that people were in themselves. And this might bring a topic that I think it's a bit of nonsense, like, the tester role and the developer role, but we can get to that later. And then later I started getting into Selenium, into all these testing tools. And I went to a testing conference and the experience was completely different. So super open people, completely friendly, conversations here and there. I made tons of connections. And thanks to that, I ended up contributing to the Selenium project. And one of the key moments I remember when I was starting is that somebody was asking in the Selenium chat a question that I don't really remember the question, but I just replied, try this. And 2 days later, the person wrote me privately saying, hey, I tried what you said and it worked. Thank you very much. And that person was like in the other side of the world. So that type of feeling was what brought me to open source, without actually knowing that this was like a community or something like that.
Your earliest involvement with the Selenium project was actually a similarly commercial venture like Sauce, right? You worked for a company, didn't you, that sort of monetized Selenium, and you also worked on Selenium at the same time, as is kind of the same way it's going on right now. And I have this feeling, this situation that I'm confronted with occasionally, because I'm also on the Selenium project. Do you ever feel like there's a conflict of interest between deciding between the needs of the project, needs of the community versus the needs of Sauce Labs?
To be honest, I don't see that in this company. I saw that in other companies that I had the chance to work briefly, and that's one of the reasons why I left, right? Because I have been in this project even before joining that previous company and also Sauce Labs, and there is like a huge difference. So one of the great things about being at Sauce is that there is no clear or there is not a command saying, do we need this in Selenium so Sauce Labs works better, or we need this in Selenium to, I don't know, drive more customers to Sauce Labs. There is nothing like that really at all.
Yeah,
there is a huge amount of freedom to drive the project to work as its best way for the community, and we just think that the more people get, so the more comfortable people get using Selenium, the more people will use it, and eventually that will benefit Sauce Labs. So I think that's key for me, that I have freedom to decide what happens in the project and also feed that information as a feedback to Sauce Labs. Yeah, I don't know if you have perceived the same thing.
I agree with you in general. There's been a shockingly low conflict of interest. I've actually, and I don't want to turn this into like a conversation about Sauce, but I think it's interesting because when anyone is working on an open source project that is also monetized by one or more companies, this is going to be something that they face, I think, even going to work at the company. And I think that if you're in that space where you're trying to decide whether or not to go work for a vendor in that way, you need to ask some real hard questions during the interview, which I most certainly did when I came here. Also spoke to some people I knew who were here. I wouldn't be surprised if Nikolay and Titus Fortner did the same when they came here. But I know that there have been times when I have been on the phone with a customer and I am recommending that, when I encounter, I've told the story told so many stories on this podcast about people over testing. And when I'm in that situation and I say, look, you're doing too much Selenium, you need to be doing less Selenium testing and more API testing. it would be very natural, I think, for people around here to say, don't say that. Sauce won't make money if we just say that. But it's like, no, we need to partner with people. We need to make sure that people understand the proper way to employ these tools, and that Selenium is not the only tool for testing. And it's ridiculous to even think that it would be. So no, I think it's been shockingly good. And that really wasn't my point. Like I said, I'm not trying to go all sauce here, but I think it's an important consideration. Like I said, I'm curious to hear Nikolay's experience.
I had, my experience has also been very similar to your guys' experience here in terms of not a lot of conflict of interest. The fact that Sauce Labs has been built on open source, it encourages open source, especially now more than ever. We're kind of getting back to our roots and making sure that we rebuild the core, help out the users that helped build Sauce Labs to where it is today, that helped build Selenium to where it is today, and provide as much value as we can to them. And that, to me, is super powerful, and actually one of the main reasons why I came over to Sauce when I did 5 years ago. Diego, I did have a question for you from an open source perspective. What are some challenges and benefits that you've had in your life as a result of contributing to open source?
I'm gonna start with the benefits because they were very easy to perceive. I'm from Colombia. I worked there like for about 8 years as a software developer in a media company, so in a newspaper with a TV channel and all that. And I had no exposure to open source at all. Then when I moved to Germany, and then in my first company, I was learning about automation. I started to interact with some projects in open source. I sent like a couple of contributions, but nothing big. But then when I decided to focus on that more, after spending, I don't know, like 6 months or something of doing that consistently, if there was like a recruiter asking me something, like, or if I wanted to apply to a company, it just was so much easier, like to get noticed by the work you do out there. So I think you see this often with designers, with people who work in UX. They have their portfolios out there, and it's much easier to understand how they work. So when you actually do open source, it's really easy to go up in your career, and that has been the biggest benefit I've seen perceived right away. And connected to that, well, I have met people from all around the world. I've been able to travel the world. I've been able to make connections in different countries, in different time zones, and that just is like, like they're getting attached to the community, like by different through different points. It's not just one single thing, or like this is helping me to get a better salary or a better position. But connected to that is like you meet people that they teach you things. You meet people who actually teach you also life lessons, not only technical things. So it's like really an involvement that makes you grow as a person, I would say. And the challenge is also connected to that, because you see that the people who work in projects and in technical topics are also humans. So when you're in a company and you want to move to the next company, then maybe you work like 3-4 years and then you quit, you move to the next one. But the company as a whole has a structure that the knowledge most of the time stays there. In open source, you might be working in a project and like it's natural, right? Like you do 2 years, 3 years of something, and then you're like, okay, I want to do something else. And then you leave the project. And it's super challenging to keep that knowledge inside the project to make it go forward. And that's something that has to be highlighted about Selenium. It has been running for, what is it, Marcus, 19 years?
Yeah.
And the knowledge is still there. So I think that has been the hardest, so the most complicated challenge, to keep the knowledge in the project while people change on a volunteer basis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, that's a great point. It actually leads me to this interesting idea where, I've been involved in the Selenium project since 2012, I'd say, in some sort of fashion. I think I've only written, I'm going to say 12 lines of code that have actually made it into production and actually are part of Selenium. But I've done a whole lot of other work with Selenium that, you know, contributes to the open source project, but actually isn't code. I wonder if you could talk about the different ways people can get involved in Selenium or other open source projects, even if they're not coders, in order to sort of either lead up to writing code or just to sort of contribute because they're gaining a lot of benefit from the project. They want to give back, but they don't want to write code.
That's a very good point, because that's a common misbelief that you need to know how to code, how to create software to contribute to open source. And so let's take it from two different angles. So one is the angle of the Selenium project, and one is the angle of the open source in general. So in Selenium, we have roles that are helping the project move forward from different topics like planning a conference, or, for example, figuring out how to do marketing in the project, how to promote the project. And other way of doing contributions is helping us to improve our documentation, or, for example, when we need help to figure out how to like, I don't know, like maybe we need a new logo, maybe we need like the color scheme of our website is really bad, and then you just need to like make suggestions and help contribute us. And an extra way of doing that is just like, you know, helping us with content, because you don't need to actually send code to the project, but maybe just create content that helps the project to be better. So that's one topic, or one angle. And the other angle is open source in general. I have met brilliant people who might know a bit of coding, but it's not their cup of tea. And one of them is, for example, Lori Apple. I met her when I was working in Zalando years ago. Zalando is you could say the biggest e-commerce in Germany and maybe Europe. Well, after Amazon, of course. And then she was the head of, I think she was the head of OSPO in Zalando at that moment. Mm-hmm. And she has two projects in GitHub that have like over 7,000 stars. And one of them is called Feed Me READMEs. So when you're creating an open source project, you want to describe what the project does. And that's extremely hard. So if you go there, you create a pull request describing your project and saying, Lori, can you help me out to make this look more attractive? Then she goes and writes it down and sends something back. And there's no coding involved. It's just like, you know, creating content, collaborating. And this project she has is like really, really successful. And it's just people exchanging knowledge and content. And there is no coding or skills related to coding needed.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think that question comes up so many times, especially around like Hacktoberfest or things like that. And you start seeing how do you get involved in open source like 101? And it's like, well, first by asking, right? I mean, what can I get involved with? What do you need?
I think I think that's the wrong question most of the time. Like, how do I get involved? It's a correct question, but it's not the most correct one. Let's not say wrong, but like you ask that as an opener, but normally you can get started in a very easy way, but being constant is where people fail, because I have seen many people started like doing 1 month, 2 months of contributions, and then you don't see them anymore. So I think that's the most complicated thing, to be constant, consistent in a project, and that's most of the time how people get successful. Not really because you're super talented, just because you are like very constant and very consistent in the work you do.
Why do they walk away?
I have it's a comparison, like when you go to the gym, maybe you go 2 months, right? And then you just don't continue going. And it's really hard to answer that question, right?
Yeah.
There are many different answers.
Yeah, I think that's the same in any community, right? You have people who are extremely involved. You have people who are lurkers. You have people who are the ones answering every questions. You have the ones who are asking every question. And then you have maybe people act differently in different communities, right? I don't know. Sometimes you feel more at ease in some communities over others. There's so many factors, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nikolay, were you going to ask a question?
I can.
Oh, I thought you were. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I was, you had unmuted yourself and I was anticipating a question. And so then I didn't say anything. So it's all your fault. No, I'm just kidding.
I was actually going to ask the same exact question you asked, but you asked it. So it's all good. But one thing I was going to say was, Diego, I was going to ask you, is there a project contribution that you're particularly proud of?
Well, that's a good question. I have never thought about it.
Was there a moment when you were contributing to Selenium where you committed that PR and you were just like, this is spectacular, and you just walked away and drank a beer?
A drop the mic moment.
Yeah,
No,
drop
I
the-
think-
drop the
think
keyboard.
Was that like a Selenium 4 release? Or
I
don't
was
know.
thinking about that one because the project was going through a difficult time, given that we didn't have many active contributors. And until a few recent years, we were not that organized to have like some planning, some like documents where we have recorded what we want to do, the decisions and all that. So everything was in Simon's head. So what we had to do, actually we went with Titus. We flew to London and then we sat with him around 4 hours and we basically extract everything from his head, put it in documents, and that was 1 month before exactly the pandemic started. So we put everything in GitHub issues, in Google Docs, everything there. And the sum of that effort through those, like it was October 2021, I believe, was the release. That's when like I felt like, okay, like all this paid off, like all this effort, like going there, sitting down, talking to people, writing documents, and all that is like I felt really, really good at that moment because it's not all technical work. It's putting people together in a room, talking to each other, agreeing and or disagreeing and all that. So I think that was a very special moment because you could see that little efforts day by day become this huge thing that we finally made a release that was being expected for a long time. So yeah, I think that was one of the most like happy moments in my open source career so far.
I think to me, one thing I heard, which is interesting, and I kind of want to talk about is, I think it's a misconception that engineering is done in a silo by yourself in an office where all you do is sit and write code and hope that amazing stuff happens. I think amazing stuff happens typically when you've got a team of awesome engineers that are committed to a vision and a passion that have to work together outside of just coding. As you said, it's documentation, it's creating a community, motivating people, holding meetings, being consistent in your contributions. And then all of that put together creates a Selenium. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's well put because most of the time it's the non-technical stuff that makes the technical things shine. And one thing I have noticed, at least what open source has made me clear, is that I'm not like a what you call like a 10x engineer, like these super skilled people, but I am
You're
not the
100x,
person.
right?
Exactly. Divided by 100. And then but what I have perceived is that, you know, like there are people who are pretty good on doing like the 80% of the work. Like I have an idea and this is the POC and this is how it works. And many people get excited. And somehow I end up very often in a situation that I am doing the 20% remaining to make that thing happen. So I think that's my special talent to actually get the idea all over the line and make it happen. So that is what I'm thankful to open source because that's what I have learned along these years.
You're the closer.
Maybe that could be a good way of putting it. But yeah, I mean that's also something that happens in open source. You learn a lot to like you have invested so much time, so much of your free time into this that you want to see it happen at some point.
Yeah, Nikolay, to your point, in 2020, I was relatively new to the tech industry as a whole, and the impression that you have of a developer is someone who sits in a room by themselves, because that's the image that has been fed to us for however long, and that's just so far from the truth. And it took me to on a podcast that I hosted in the industry, got to talk to a bunch of developers using an Oculus, and they had developed a way. They were working on a project, and the only way they said that they could work on this new startup was by meeting in the metaverse on a somewhat regular basis for their code sessions together, because they were missing that ability to work together, that other tools were so synchronous so asynchronous that they missed out on that ability to connect. And so it speaks right to what you were saying.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's some statistics. I mean, the statistics are super old at this point, but I can't imagine things are too changed. But that I think the average developer, last time I looked, writes something like 8 lines of code a day, net, spend 30 minutes a day writing code, as opposed to 7.5 hours spent, between meetings, emails, personal stuff, and just goofing off. And that's just, I think that's just the reality of it. And I think that might not even be that's a good thing. Like it's a very creative. It's underestimated in terms of how creative you have to be a coder at all. It's almost, and I think for some people it is truly art, and you have an artist's temperament in order to do it. And so I think that it's a very misperceived, misunderstood profession in general.
I think it's a science and an art. There's a science to it, and you can be very artistic with it.
It's like it's science once it's finished, but it's art to create it, or something like that.
Just going to ask, do you have more of a mathematical brain or artistic brain to be a coder? Or is it the perfect merge?
I think it's a good merge, but also you also have to have some, in a lot of roles, you have to have some social skills as well. And I'm a bad example, because I've only written code professionally for about 20% of my whole career. So, but I'd be curious. Diego's a lot more of an engineer than I ever been.
No, I don't think so. But I think it's a good mix that balances over your life, because at some point, probably when you're beginning, you want to do things more precise, more perfect, more that it looks like you have a bunch of knowledge that you want to display in code. And over time, you learn that simplicity is what many people don't appreciate, but in the end, that's what they want. So slowly you balance, like, I know this is not the perfect thing, but this is simple enough for the most of the use cases. And I think maybe that there's some art in there, where you have this ability to balance both areas in a way that it's good enough, that you don't have to make things perfect, that you have to just solve as many problems as you can. And I think that's a very good balance that happens along your career, how your brain is leveling, and in the end, that helps you as a person, like to reflect on different things on your daily life, I would say.
Curious as to where you see the future of open source and test automation kind of heading.
Yeah, I think it's very so if you ask me like this, so if you asked me this question 1 year ago, I would say, yeah, it's very complicated, but like every year gets more complicated, because when you have important projects just being maintained by one or two people who have no support, and then you have like big companies profiting from this effort that people spend on their free time, that is like, so something is wrong there, like something is not going the right way. So from that point of view, I think open source is really suffering. But also, there's never a better moment to get into open source, because like there is always so much new things, so many new things happening, so much activity out there. So, and there is, before it was mostly focused in like, like back end, front end and all that. But nowadays with like data science, like now artificial intelligence, now different ways of exploring and exploring different models. Like you have a lot of these things in the cloud, like the Jupyter notebooks. That you have so many options to do open source, so many different areas, topics. Like, for example, when in the pandemic, the Corona app in Germany was open sourced, so people can just go there and contribute to it, things like that. So there are so many fields that like there has never been a better moment to get into open source. But also, if you want to make a business from open source, it's extremely critical. And one clear example in the test automation industry is like what the rumor that was around Cypress last week, because there was a post in Reddit, and then one of the co-creators of Cypress or
Former
previous
CTO, I believe.
So Gleb was also expressing their disbelief, like how the project was going in the wrong direction, and then if I think about it, I was like, from the Selenium point of view, I was like, okay, like you were talking really, really bad about Selenium during this situation. So it's like maybe karma, like this is what happens when you're not nice to other people. But from the open source point of view, it's like there is an open source project where people have invested time. I think they were having like 50 million investment or something like that, and it's not finding a way. So what does this mean for open source? Like, and test automation, like this market is extremely complicated, and to be successful in test automation with an open source project is extremely hard, and this is another proof of that. So I'm more sad and more worried about that reality than actually having a Selenium competitor go away. Because that is like just worrying for the open source community, I would say.
Very interesting, because I'm in a debate right now, because I feel like I have a lot to say on this topic, but I feel like a lot of it's kind of speculating, and a lot of it's kind of whinging about stuff, and I'm not sure I should really go into it. I think that ultimately I share your trepidation about kind of what the implications might be for the future of open source. But I feel like the truth is that Cypress is a solid project, solid piece of code that is hard to build a monetized business around because of just like how it was designed. I feel like that is the case. I don't really know if it's a harbinger of the future as much as it was, an attempt to shoehorn a business into a place where maybe it didn't belong. I don't know that that's true. But I mean, I see if Cypress as a company does end up going away, who knows if it will or not. I kind of doubt it will, but I think that the project itself probably will continue to live and be community supported if it is truly open source, which it is. So I don't really think of it as a harbinger. I think that people can make wonky decisions around something, around good ideas. I think that there have been in the past a lot of other companies that were based on Selenium besides the main ones that are in place right now, and some of them are gone. I think it's just I don't think it's a harbinger, but that might just be wishful, hopeful thinking on my part.
I think I agree with you, Marcus, that I don't see it as a harbinger of, open source going away. To me, how it feels is open source now is bigger than ever. Communities are being formed around open source, and these communities are learning and growing from each other and copying each other. And that's creating innovation and growth everywhere. What a more concerning area to me in terms of the future of automated testing is, I feel like, and I'd be curious what you all think, is 5 to 10 years, I see a vision where there's going to be like a senior level engineer that's just managing a bunch of bots to organize them into creating systems versus a team of engineers working together. And so I envision that kind of a reality where, it's like less people are in control of what's happening, and instead you're managing bots to do your work. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's not, but it depends how you view it and where you are on that side.
I don't know. I feel like the one area of software that has been the slowest to adapt to new changes has been testing. Like, a lot of people that I meet in the industry are still testing stuff like I tested it in 2006. So I think in general in software development, the evolution you described is probably not far off, but I think that testers are going to be so far behind in adopting anything like that. And I could be wrong, absolutely could be wrong. But it's interesting, interesting idea for sure.
Yeah, I also think there's, I see most of the new tools around machine learning and all that to be assistants, like helping you to do things, but not doing all your job. And I don't see that happening in the near future, because so far, and I think I learned that from you, Nikolay, where the software industry is changing so often and very quickly, and there's new things happening. So for a tool that has to learn all that and learn how to use it, there's always going to be, the tool is going to be always behind the new stuff that is happening in software development. So you might get to a point that there is some balance, but still you need to figure out and to be on top of that to see if that thing's actually working well. There are many scenarios where it will be working well. Well, like you don't need the latest tools to do that, but just like learning things to their own thing, I see it still very challenging. And this is combined with the situation where, if talking about testing, like if you have like a revolutionary product that you want to put to the market and you want to test it, normally a tool that will suggest tests for you is based on existing products out there. So if you want to ask that tool, like, help me to test this, unless you have everything hosted in your network and all the model and everything, they're going to be leaking your secrets out there while you use these tools. So there is a balance that if you want to innovate, maybe you cannot use AI that much, right? Because they will be leaking what you want to do.
There was an interesting presentation by Microsoft a week or two ago at Microsoft Inspire, where they showed off their AI for enterprise cloud, which basically just means that it's an AI trained on your data, and all the data remains inside of your organization and never leaks out, which I found very, very interesting and moving and promising, because that is what many organizations fear, is exactly what you described, Diego. And so many organizations are banning like ChatGPT because of that. And so now, if you can promise that your data will be safe and your secrets will be safe, that creates a whole new reality.
Yeah, but where did you get the training data? Do you have to buy it?
I mean, no, I think it's the LLM is like a trained LLM that suddenly has access within a silo to your data.
Yep, exactly.
So The LLM itself is still, kind of the same one that we're all using for ChatGPT 4 or whatever, but it's pulled off into your own environment and nothing can get out unless you put it out. It's the way I understand it, and it's pretty hot if that's real.
Yeah. Just wait till the leaks come from that.
I mean, it's going to happen, but at that point, my bet is that at that point, it's social engineering. It is a human error that's getting the leak out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, that's not necessarily the case.
It's the same situation as moving from on-prem, hosting of your environments to the cloud. The organizations have the same exact concerns. What about my data? Right now, it's safe in my data centers. What happens if I put it in this cloud where anyone can access it, right? And so you solve that same problem, and now you got AI that's private and only accessible to your organization.
On that note, just to kind of wrap that up, the rising tide lifts all boats, that saying that has existed for quite a while now. I'm such a firm believer in that saying. And that's why I personally don't believe that open source will go anywhere, because I think there are individuals who will always be there who have the industry first, the community first type mindset. The better we make this software, the better we make this for each other, the better experiences we'll have and the more we'll thrive as an industry, right? That kind of we're all in it together mindset. But I wonder about that take when it's commercialized or monetized. And I'm wondering, I don't know if you've thought about this, but maybe that's the piece that,
it's just, I'm sorry, I want to hand it to Diego in a minute. It reminds me so much of a story of when I was at a previous company. We had so many great ideas, so many unbelievably cool things that we were working on, and I wanted to release all of it as open source. And one of the lawyers of the company was like, "No, we're not going to do that. We might turn that into a revenue stream one day." And I'm like, "We sell shoes. we're not going to open source this." So you're right. This is a human problem getting in the way.
Birkenstocks 4.0 new release.
Birkenstocks is now doing software testing. Isn't that exciting? It wasn't Birkenstocks.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
We just lost Diego. Them as a sponsor.
But I think also all these models, the training, the data, or the artifacts they generate for you to be useful and used by you on your daily tasks. I mean, they need some primitives. Let's like the basic building blocks, and most of those basic building blocks are called open source. So, for example, Selenium is like a tool that is the basic building block of automation. So, if that doesn't exist, how a model can actually build up the data and learn and use something to provide something useful for you. Same thing, like, I don't know, with frameworks like React or all these things. They are like building blocks that you can use to leverage those models. So in the end, open source, I think, will stay there for quite a long time.
Yeah. So before we go, we've done this with a couple guests. Figure we'd try it with you. I'm only going to ask one, but we kind of end sometimes on a rapid fire question or two. So I'm just curious. I want to ask this question because I've been meaning to ask it. So rapid fire question. You haven't been prompted at all for this. If you could have dinner with any tech pioneer, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow. I would like to meet more in detail Andreas Tofsten. So in the WebDriver world, many people talk about Simon Stewart and David Burns, but slowly over the years, I've learned that Andreas Tofsten, who was working in the Opera browser and then Mozilla and all that, seems to be that one of the hidden minds behind all this that we use as automation. And these days, we're talking about BiDi, the bidirectional feature of WebDriver. And I learned very recently that Andreas suggested that in like, I don't know, like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So I would
Brilliant
like to
guy.
learn more from Andres. Yeah.
I believe he is studying at monastery now. He has taken a different life,
Wow.
which is super admirable.
Wow. There you go. Well, awesome. Diego, thank you so much for coming on Test Case Scenario. Hope you had fun.
Thank you for having me, and looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. And thank you for listening along. We had a great time. Hope you did too. Have a question for Diego, have a question for us, want to learn more, or comment on anything. Maybe you disagreed with something. Maybe you agreed with something. Send us an email at community-hub@saucelabs.com and engage with us. Until next time, I'm Jason Baum for Nikolay and Marcus. We'll see you next time.